Hello to all of you dear people around the world. Welcome to the second episode of the Elixir of Awareness channel. In this episode, we're going to talk about love. Strangely, love can be the source of the best and most pleasant moments of our life, and it can also cause the most mental torments. Love is a very strange thing. In this episode, we try to get closer to a deeper understanding of love. What's very clear is that the situation of love in our world today isn't good at all. After the duration of this episode, many new relationships will start, and of course many couples around the world will be separated from each other, and many relationships will end. And this is what happens every day in our world. This is really sad. People who entered a relationship with a lot of big dreams and optimism to be happy, but unfortunately their relationship breaks up and ends. Our goal in this episode is to try to make fewer people experience this extreme suffering and these separations. We try to show you a realistic understanding of love and show you a new description of the subject of love to help us appear more courageous, active, and effective in our relationships. And we will also have practical recommendations at the end of this episode that will explain how to act in the best and wisest possible way if we're in a relationship that torments us. But for a deeper understanding of love, we need to go back a little, to a distant past. We must go back to our embryonic period when we hadn't yet entered this world. In the final months of the embryonic period, when we weren't yet born, the structure of the brain develops so much that the baby can have an understanding of its surroundings. And this information is recorded in their subconscious. Before we're born, in the final months of our mother's pregnancy, a vague image of a unique and extraterrestrial relationship is recorded in our subconscious. We experience the peak of security and connection in our mother's womb in a special swimming pool. The best moments of our life that we may never consciously remember are the unique relationship that a baby establishes with its mother during the embryonic period. Our mother takes care of us with all her being and with all the cells of her body. Our heart beats with her heart, we feed from her, and we're at the peak of security, and this is a unique and unrepeatable relationship. And in the depths of our unconscious, this beautiful experience is hacked, although we can't remember it. But suddenly we're separated from this comfort, from this connection, and this absolute oneness with our mother. We enter this world, our umbilical cord is cut. We're no longer one with our mother and we become two separate persons, and this is the beginning of our loneliness. All psychologists believe that the first wound that all human beings experience in their lives is the pain and wound of separation after birth, where they're separated from this safe connection and experience loneliness with all their heart. When all babies at the moment of birth from the safe environment of the mother's womb enter an unknown world that they know nothing about, they're suffering and crying from the depths of their being, and only one miraculous thing can calm them down, and that's the mother's hug again. They feel that this is exactly the safe existence that was separated from them, and they're once again in her arms. But with the difference that now two people are separated, and this isn't at all comparable to that unique and unrepeatable relationship during the fetal period. Of course, even after birth, our mother takes care of us with all her heart. She spends all her energy on our safety. But the nature of this security, but the nature of this caregiver, but the nature of this love is very different from what we experienced in the embryonic period. We just want to say that our birthday is the beginning of our loneliness. After birth, we always try to find that beautiful lost relationship once again by communicating with people, family, and friends. It's a relationship that's been formed in the depths of our unconscious for years, but each time we become more and more disappointed. Our desperation to find that wonderful relationship again and to overcome loneliness continues until we suddenly fall in love. Psychologists call it the magical other, and suddenly we experience this feeling in the depths of our subconscious, as if we finally found the lost person and that unique relationship again. We think we finally found someone who can revive that memory and that beautiful unity for us again. And that's why that person's name is magical other, because their presence is really magical. We see them and fall in love with them with all our heart, and they become a very different person to us. Because it's connected to our most fundamental desire, which is to escape from loneliness. That person looks amazing to us because it connects to our deep pain, the pain of being separated from our mother at the moment of birth. And they give us this promise and feeling that with their presence we will be complete once again, and we can get rid of our loneliness. And we can experience a unique relationship, so we fall in love, and we believe any kind of falling in love is a triumph of hope over personal knowledge. We fall in love with the hope that we won't find in the beloved the things that are in us. Things like dishonesty, weakness of will, and all the shortcomings that we know in ourselves, we feel that our lover doesn't have them. Every lover's movement and every lover's word becomes insanely meaningful to us in the early days of finding them. We look for honesty in their face that we've never seen in our own faces or those around us, and this is where we say that love means the victory of hope over personal knowledge. Because all our lives we thought that we mightn't find someone who's so perfect and so unique, but at the moment of falling in love, it was as if we found them, and as if they're the only one who can take away all our loneliness, and we with this beautiful hope fall in love with our beloved. If you watched the previous episode where we talked about the suffering of loneliness, we mentioned that in Plato's Symposium book, a person named Aristophanes described love like this. In the very distant past, people were very complete. That is to say, they were both male and female, had 4 arms, 4 legs, 2 faces, and 2 heads. And humans were so strong that Zeus and other ancient gods feared them. So Zeus had to cut humans in half because he was afraid of their strength. And their existence was divided into 2 halves, and from that day on, every man and woman live in the sorrow of finding their lost half. Aristophanes believed that love means finding the lost half. Love promises us perfection. It promises us that with a lover in our lives, we can be whole again, like those perfect people that Aristophanes talked about. And love creates the impression in us that despite our beloved, we're powerful and we're no longer alone, and wow, it's a strange and pleasant promise. This is why lovers are full of enthusiasm and imagination, full of hope and dreams, and of course full of amazement. Imagine all your life you were looking for someone to heal that deep wound of loneliness, and suddenly you find that person in the hustle and bustle of the world. And at that moment you'll be amazed. At the first moment of seeing magical other, we're stunned by watching the existence of that person, and this moment is indescribable. We just stare at them, and the world stops moving. And at that moment all human hopes reach their peak in us. It's interesting that generally the advice that the world gives us about love also confirms our hopes. The structure of most classic love stories is that the lover and the beloved find each other first, and if they can meet and overcome obstacles and be with each other, probably the story will end in such a way that they live together for years at the peak of happiness. Classic love stories promise us so simply that by discovering and possessing another, we can overcome all difficulties. And we will no longer be alone, and we will be complete and powerful like the people Aristotle spoke of. We would like to say that most of the advice about love in our world is so simple and optimistic, exactly looks like the airplane safety instruction card. You must have seen that there's a card on the flight that always explains what we should do if the flight is in an emergency situation. Did you notice how happy the faces of the passengers are in the drawings of the rescue card? Passengers are using oxygen masks with complete composure and smile, and very calmly, as if it's the best day of their lives, they're getting off the emergency exit slides of the aircraft. We want to say that most of the predictions that the world tells us about love are just as simple and optimistic like it, and it's like those aircraft safety instruction cards. That is to say, it tells us that crises may occur in a relationship, but you can overcome all crises with coolness, and we can live happily together for many years in the peak of pleasure and peace. In this episode, we want to challenge the optimistic idea that love is a simple thing, and we're trying to look at this issue from another point of view. There are 3 unfortunate truths that help us be realistic about love. First, love isn't equal to compatibility. Falling in love with someone doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good partner and spouse for us. Don't forget, both heart and mind create happiness together. The second unfortunate truth is that love cannot solve our fundamental problems. That promise of perfection that they recommend to us about love is just a legendary story. When we get into a relationship and even get married, remember that our personal problems of the past will always remain, yes, even after marriage. That is to say, there's no guarantee that entering into an emotional relationship or even marriage can solve our personal and fundamental problems. We must try to solve them ourselves. And the third unfortunate truth is that love isn't just about making love, rather it's to be found and then built. The belief that we can experience years of carefree and wonderful life by reaching our magical other is also just a legendary story. In fact, you've to find love first and then build it. We think that love is more than a feeling. It's a feeling, and then it's an action. Just pay attention to this sentence once more. Love is more than a feeling. It's a feeling, and then it's an action. Love is more than a feeling. It's a feeling, and then it's an action. Let's go back to that moment when we suddenly find someone in the hustle and bustle of the world with the hope that it will take away our loneliness. And we will be full of energy and try to have that person by our side. We talk to them and express our love to them, and we do some things to form that relationship. And here 2 important scenarios happen. The first scenario is that the magical other accepts our invitation and says yes. And the second scenario is that they don't accept our invitation and reject us and say no. Let's talk about both scenarios very quickly and see what effects each will have on our subconscious. But let's talk about the second scenario first. That is, when the magical other answer to us is the word no. Yeah, we know, really one of the most difficult moments of life is revealed here. Perhaps the most bitter moment and experience for a human being is when someone who hopes to end their loneliness with them, suddenly they give us a negative answer and reject us. And the first sentence that comes to mind is this: they don't love me. This sentence causes our mind to suffer a terrible earthquake. Yes, we know it's a very bitter sentence. And it's so difficult to understand and accept this sentence. In this situation, our brain starts to produce 2 strong mental painkillers so that we don't collapse and be destroyed from the inside. 2 things that can smooth the sharp edges of the bitter sentence, they don't love me, and reduce its pain. One of those things is false hope. You know that this sentence, they don't love me, is such a bitter sentence that accepting it can harm us. And our first encounter with hard realities is always denial. It's as if we're wearing an armor, so that the arrows of this suffering will hit our soul with less intensity. We're just buying more time to deal with this bitter truth. Here, our brain uses false hope. That is to say, it turns the sentence "they don't love me" into "they don't love me now, but maybe later, yes." And it gives us the hope that the lover's answer can be changed from no to yes. And at this moment we begin to try with great hope to become like what the lover wants. We start showing affection, giving points and even ransom. We do all these things so that maybe they'll love us. This strong painkiller and this mechanism is a very good thing in the short term and sometimes even makes us take positive actions to reach the beloved. But there's an important point here that if this behavior continues too much, these painkillers will become to an addiction. If for a long time we false hope that we will one day establish a relationship that we cannot establish, in that case we move away from the present moment and reality. And when it gets long, it's almost impossible to establish a relationship, even with the real person. The second painkiller that our subconscious produces for not accepting the sentence "they don't love me" is fantasy and dreaming. Sometimes reality is so painful that we take refuge in our minds and create an imaginary world there. A world full of beautiful dreams and fantasies, and in those fantasies, they love me. We fantasize that we've reached them. We are listening to music together, we going to the cinema and going on a trip, even we've children and we're very happy. And with the highest quality, we imagine these fantasies with all the details and build an imaginary palace of dreams for ourselves. We want to say that maybe this strong painkiller can be a good and healing thing in the short term. But when a lot of time passes and we're trapped in our world with false hope and mental fantasies, suddenly, something happens that all those dream palaces collapse on our heads. And sometimes the volume of this debris is so large that we can no longer get out from under it. So if you are in a one-sided relationship with a person for a long time, and if you've been involved in false hope and fantasy for a long time, and you feel that your relationship has no real achievements, and if you think there's no way, please, with all the pain and difficulty, face the reality and stop using these painkillers and accept that sentence "they don't love me." We know this sentence is very, very painful to accept, but it's extremely healing. We've millions of people in this world whose existence is left somewhere in a relationship, and they try to make up for this shortcoming with fantasy and false hope. And that's exactly why they can't enter into a new relationship. Dear friends, the great psychologist Carl Gustav Jung says there's no coming to consciousness without pain. The sentence "they don't love me" is really painful. But if there's no evidence in reality that you can establish that relationship, please accept this unbearable truth, no matter how painful it is. Just endure and let yourself go. Research shows that those people who take these mental painkillers for a long time, even if after some time the magical other changes their opinion, and their answer changes from negative to positive, and if, for any reason, that relationship is rekindled, but they will no longer be able to establish a relationship with that person's true self. The reason is that they created an imaginary statue of that person in their mind, which is much better and more perfect compared to that person's real self. And when they compare them to the person they dreamed up in their head, they realize that even the real person has flaws. And unfortunately, that initial enthusiasm and taste and that initial feeling will never return. As we said, there's no coming to consciousness without pain. But the second scenario is that the lover, that is to say the magical other, says yes and their answer is positive. Let's see what happens here. A famous anthropologist named Mrs. Helen Fisher conducted an interesting experiment called FMRI, which is an imaging method of the brain. In this method, substances are injected into the person's body, which includes labeled sugars. And then people are asked to do a mental activity like math multiplication. And after that, by imaging and observing the areas in the brain that consume the most sugar, they will notice the function of the brain in different strata. And with this method, they find out how each part of the brain works. Of course, science has proven that the brain has a holographic property, which means that all brain layers play a role in information processing to a certain extent. But with the fMRI method, it's possible to find out which parts of the brain react more to the input information. The interesting thing that Mrs. Helen Fisher did was that she took fMRI brain scans from the lovers. The volunteers who participated were asked to tell their love story and talk about someone they like. For example, how much they love them and what kind of person they're, and brain scans were taken from them at the same time. She wanted to know what reactions love causes in our brain, and the result was very surprising. In this research, she realized that the brain scans and brain patterns taken from lovers were very similar to the brain patterns of cocaine addicts, full of fantasy and strength and energy, insomnia, high heart rate, and other types of reactions that cocaine addicts show. It's very interesting, do you agree? Another interesting point is that the researchers took this test from the same volunteers sometime later, and they realized that their brain patterns have changed over time. They no longer showed the old reactions, and in fact, their brains showed more realistic reactions. They realized that their minds had come face to face with the facts over time, and the primary emotions in the brain are also reduced. Even their verbal narratives in describing their love have changed also. The narratives had changed from that initial excitement-filled form to a more realistic description that was, of course, still full of affection. This experiment shows that our mental pathway changes during the experience of a romantic relationship. In the Korean language, 2 words describe the love that are wonderful. The first word is sarang, which means romantic love, that is to say, the same initial excitement and taste caused by finding a magical other. And another word is chong, means deep attachment. That is, Koreans believe that people experience sarang at the beginning of the relationship and then reach the chung. It means that we still love them, we still imagine a future only with them, but with the difference that initial enthusiasm gives way to a very deep attachment. And this change is a real truth that is rarely mentioned in today's world. The modern world has a lack of words to describe love. The modern world tells us that when you meet someone who you love, you experience a wonderful feeling with them, and this love will stay with you until the end. But we can conclude that this love turns into something deeper, more realistic, and of course better. But because we're surrounded by books and movies and stories that only show love as that initial excitement at the beginning of a relationship, we get disappointed in many of our relationships, and the root of many betrayals is this seemingly simple issue. We enter into a relationship and think that initial excitement should be there forever in our relationship. And suddenly, when we feel that feeling has changed, we've doubt and crisis, and we say to ourselves, there's probably a problem. We say to ourselves, maybe they're not my magical other, and we feel that part of us is still alone. And this is where many people unfortunately go to other magical others, and another, and another, and another magical others. The roots of these events are misunderstandings about love, guys. As we said earlier, loneliness is an innate thing. No eye can understand your whole picture. No other human can repeat for us that sweet experience of the fetal period in the mother's womb. After birth, we can approach people, become friends with them, and even fall in love with them. But this expectation that people can completely eliminate our loneliness is a completely wrong idea. In the best possible relationship, a part of you'll remain not understood. And this isn't your partner's fault and is completely normal. Only our expectations of relationships should change a little. That initial romantic passion in a long-term relationship gives way to a deep sense of attachment, which is something ordinary and infinitely wonderful, and the world has forgotten it. If our perception of love is just the initial excitement, we will always feel that our relationships are inadequate. And we're looking for new people to experience that initial thrill again and again, and this makes us lose depth in relationships. In the story of The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, there's a unique narrative. The little prince falls in love with a flower. Actually, that red rose is the lover of the little prince. The flower told the little prince that you're very lucky because there's only one flower like me in the whole world. Finally, one day the little prince on his journey to the earth suddenly came across a flower garden with thousands of red flowers, more beautiful and fragrant and younger flowers. By seeing this scene, he was suddenly destroyed from the inside. He was shocked and saddened. In the continuation of the story, the little prince meets a fox and the fox tells him a big secret. After talking to the fox, the little prince realizes that the value of his flower is as much as the time he spent on it. He understood that it's always more beautiful and fragrant than his flower, but if his flower is valuable, it's because of all the good and bad days or difficult moments that he's been by his side. The value of your flower is for the time you spent on it. And this is the beautiful concept that many people have forgotten, a wonderful but extremely simple love. We believe love is something so ordinary and so beautiful. And we believe that love is more than an initial emotional feeling, it's an effective action to build. Because of the wrong image that the media and the modern world show us about love, we usually think that if a relationship is right, then we don't need to work for it. But we believe that for every relationship you have to try. And this is a misconception because even the best relationships need care and action. In a relationship, some things can be changed and we must change them. And then we can decide if we can stay in that relationship or not. Many of us committed suicide because of the fear of death, and we never started to fix our relationships. We suffer in an emotional relationship, we don't do anything, and we expect a miracle to happen and fix everything. Ask the mirror for the name of your Savior. Ask the mirror for the name of your Savior. Yes, many relationships should be left, and we don't necessarily have to stay in every unhealthy relationship. Many relationships have no hope of being fixed, but we've to do our best before that relationship ends. After emotional separations, something that next to the memories of love torments us greatly is a feeling of regret. We feel regret after leaving that relationship and we say that maybe we could have done some things. We say to ourselves, I didn't fight enough and I didn't take effective action, I could fix it. I don't know what your story is, but if you're in a relationship that's causing you problems, you should ask this question to yourself. Have you done everything you could? We think that doing all these things isn't only to fix a relationship, but in some cases to end it better. And so that we don't feel regret after the end of that relationship anymore. That's why it's so important to do everything we can regardless of the outcome of our relationship. In continue, we're going to talk about what exactly effective actions we can take, so please stay with us. Relationship problems aren't always a sign of your partner's personality flaw and an underlying disaster, but often a sign of sending a message. Sometimes a person in a relationship is only sending this message by being quiet and seeking refuge in isolation. Please see me and pay attention to me. This is a simple solvable communication problem, not a fundamental, intractable personality problem. Before we can start taking constructive action, we need to clear several fogs. Dr. Russ Harris explains very well in the book Act with Love that why many relationships suffered emotional paralysis. He believes that 9 different layers of fog have covered those relationships. The first layer is the layer of shoulds. That we say this isn't my problem and I shouldn't change, why should I make it easy for them? Why shouldn't they try for a relationship and why should I take action to make our relationship better? That they should apologize first or other sentences like this. This layer does not allow us to take effective measures to improve our relationship. The second layer is the fruitless effort layer. We think it's too late, the work is over, and we can never make up for it. So why should we act at all? To remove this layer, we should think about the fact that we don't always do these actions for our partner, and sometimes we do that for ourselves so that we don't regret it in the future. The third layer is the ifs layer. In this layer, we get involved in many fantasies. For example, we say that if a certain person was my partner, I wouldn't have these problems. If they changed themselves, if they understood me, and if. But ask yourself, can this layer help your relationship? The fourth layer is the layer of the painful past. Here we remember all the painful memories that happened in our relationship. Most of us don't even have to try to remember them because they're always present deep in our minds. If we stay in those painful memories, they will repeat in the future. We should be able to put aside this anger for a few minutes and take effective measures. The next layer is the terrifying future layer, which tells us what possible events may happen if we change. For example, we think that if we change, we'll be hurt, and they may take advantage of us and see our actions as a sign of weakness. The sixth layer is the reasoning layer. We tell ourselves that I'm so tired, depressed, and weak that I can't do anything for the relationship. So why are we depressed? Because there's a problem in the relationship, and if we don't get out of this cycle, we will get more tired and depressed from what we are. The seventh layer is the layer of judgment. We say that they don't deserve to be treated well, they're mean persons, and they don't deserve my respect. Why should I be nice to them? They're a loser and the problem is them, not me. But ask this question again. Do these judgments help your relationship and your peace? The eighth layer is the layer I know why. We say I know why they did it on purpose. They have enmity with me. I know the reason for their behavior. But let's accept that we don't know the reason for many behaviors, and humans are very complex. Many behaviors are rooted in our childhood and unconscious memories. And the ninth and last layer that covers our relationship like a fog is the layer of deep inner fears. These thoughts are like they want to leave me. I'm not perfect enough. I can't live without them. I'm not good enough for them, etc. If we cannot remove these 9 layers from our relationship, or at least change them from unconscious to conscious, so we cannot take effective measures for our relationships. Now let's think about which of these 9 layers covered your relationship. As a result, you cannot take effective measures for it. We think a lot of our relationships are on autopilot. We left the relationships alone. We don't take any action. We don't go into details and expect something to be fixed. We've to sit behind the wheel and take control of the relationship ourselves. Mr. Gutman examined thousands of couples, and he understood a very important point. He understood that not the number of our arguments, but the way couples' argument shows whether the relationship is healthy or unhealthy. So if there's a discussion in your relationship, just don't forget a few simple fair rules, such as never taking advantage of the other party's weaknesses. Maybe our emotional partner trusted us somewhere and told us a secret. Using these secrets and weaknesses in fights is very unfair. Avoid profanity and disrespect. Don't hurt yourself. Don't pretend to be oppressed. If there's an argument, we shouldn't leave the conversation halfway by making the atmosphere emotional. Stand firmly and speak. Don't forget that there are just 2 types of couples in the world. One is the ones who argue with each other, and the other is the ones who are dead. If we follow these points that we've said, even sometimes discussion can help the health of a relationship. In this episode, we tried to get a more realistic picture of love, and we tried to create the motivation to take effective measures for our relations. The great philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre says that hell is other people, but maybe even also paradise is others. Others sometimes become our hell, and sometimes our paradise. In what they're, both our imagination and the actions we take play a very important role. Sometimes we don't recognize beauty in seemingly ordinary things. Sometimes the most beautiful phenomena exist next to us. But because the ordinary roundness is sprinkled over it, we don't see them and forget how beautiful and wonderful they are. Love is a phenomenon that can be a miracle in our lives if we change our perspective on it. Love is a very wonderful thing. The final question of this episode is, have you ever fallen in love? What is your experience with love? Please share your comments with us. And thank you so much for sticking with us until the end of this episode.